Hey, yo, what's up? What's going on? What's good, everybody? We're checking in, and I'm still, over in Las Wages. Hopefully, everything is good here on this end as we are now having the February 3rd, 2025 edition of the Boxing Source podcast. That's right, the Boxing Source here checking in, and listen, it's been a crazy weekend. Shout out to the weekend, man. Hopefully you're able to properly hear me, hear and see me here as I'm still on location and been on the move here for most of the day. Trying to get a few things here done. As I'm still doing work on the website, theboxingsource.net. We still have fighting and photos and things like that, man. Shout out to those checking in on the live chat. Shout out to MMA and boxing addicts. Like I said, man, I mean, I you know like I said, I'm still in recovery mode from Saturday night. It was a great night of fights. A great night of fights. It was a marathon for me. Was pretty much there for like all but two fights on the fight card. All but two fights on the fight card there. So just getting through all of that and the post fight press conference. It's been something. But I'm still in town here for the time being and go back home on Tuesday. But wanted to just go over what went down at the T-Mobile Arena on Saturday, February 1st, and go through the pay-per-view card basically, and some results out there from the off TV portion, because like even in the fights that weren't necessarily on the pay-per-view, you still had some good fights. You know what I mean? Still had some good fights. And my thing is that for those that like missed out live, you missed out on a lot. So that was definitely something. But I wanted to also have on my great panelists on here with me that was able to make it to the fights here in Vegas on Saturday. Of course, he's our great analyst here. The Boxing Academic is in the building. But what's going on? See if Academic is checking in here real fast. Currently has it on mute though, real quick. So I don't know if he necessarily is able to. He'll hear me pretty well. Oh, okay, yeah, it's like off and on there. So I don't know if he is able to properly join in or whatnot. But we'll probably, we'll likely hear from him a little bit later on, so to speak. So yeah, if there's like anything additional that he's going to add, you'll be able to get more from him on that, right? But in the time being, wanted to see if see if we could try again with the Boxing Academic. Let's see, mic check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boxing Academic, you there to hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I couldn't hear you at first. It might have been some on my end, but I couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay, dog. Because but where I'm at, it was like, it was like questionable if this thing was going to stream properly, but we should be all good here, man. So it was good. No, back in, settled in from being at the fights on Saturday night there. So we'll be able to properly assess what we watching.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Touchdown not too long ago, and man, just glad to be stationary. So yeah, looking forward to talking to fights, and always good to see you, man, and chop it up. And it's been a while since we saw each other, physically at a boxing match. We always talk, but it's been a while since I, traveled with you and just, was at a boxing match, together. So yeah, it was always good to kick it and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And thing about it was a great night of fights. We had like 4 good fights on the pay-per-view card, 4 very good matchups there on the pay-per-view card, and on the off TV portion we had a few other good ones on there. But first we're going to focus on what we had there in that main portion there at the T-Mobile Arena with that main event. Of course, David Benavidez versus David Morrell Jr., undefeated versus undefeated. Uh, WBC interim and WBA regular light heavyweight titles on the line. David Benavidez is coming in there like what was it, like minus 240 favorite going like right before the fight. And it was due to him having 30 fights up to that particular point, and having fights against Caleb Plant, Demetrius Andrade, and Alexander Kovacic before this fight against David Morrell Jr. And with David Morrell Jr., you're winning there as the fighter with like 11 fights, 11 pro fights. They're 11-0 with 9 wins by way of knockout. His last bout was against Roger Kalajic, and before that it was Sina Agbeko and Yamaguchi Falcao, where he had a first round KO over Falcao, second round TKO over Sina Agbeko, and called out David Benavidez, during 2023. So he said, like, hey, listen, he was ready to fight Benavidez back then. So, this one was here, looked to be, all action bout. That's what I was calling for. That's what I was saying when it was initially announced. Had the thing as a great matchup for both fighters at this particular stage of their careers. I know that there was a backstory about David Benavidez potentially fighting Canelo Alvarez, but after his bout against Alexander Kovacic in 2024, he had that decision of sorts to see if he would stay at 175 or go to 168. And the decision was made he would stay at 175. And that was mainly because there wasn't really any interest for Canelo Alvarez to face David Benavidez. Like I didn't see it happening at the time. So he stayed at 175. And so, he, tried to see if they could work out a deal with some fighters at 175. And well, David Morrell Jr.'s name came up. It had been up there, for some time since both of them were at 168. So, they were finally able to get it put together. Luis the Cubas Sr., Luis the Cubas Jr., made things happen there. So that was something that made this be a bout that was, like I said, it was going to be like all action there for it. So, with that being said, let's go into it. You had the first fight there for David Benavidez, a headline at pay-per-view event. First fight with David Morrell headlining or being at a main event there for a pay-per-view event. So, in a correction, it was David Benavidez that was at 29-0 before this fight. But it was something where it was a lot of animosity, a lot of buildup going into the bout. You see folks seeing what was going on with the press conference there on Thursday. And there was like a lot of jawing back and forth, particularly with David Benavidez and Luis the Cubas Sr. But the thing is, Luis the Cubas Sr. wasn't necessarily there in the bout. But actually, right now, want to have a special guest on that's going to talk about this fight with us. That was part of the main event there with David Benavidez and David Morrell Jr. He was in the corner with Coach Ronnie Shields and his team with David Morrell Jr. during that main event. He had a number of fighters that he was in the corner in during the February 1st card there at T-Mobile Arena. It's our great pleasure to have on once again Coach Bob Santos. Hey, what's going on?
Everything's good. Glad to be here with you guys. How's everything going?
All good, all good. I'm, like I said, I'm pretty much like the last one to leave Vegas for fight week or whatnot. So, still have one more day to kind of cool down and whatnot.
Okay.
What I mean?
Yeah.
So, we're about, talking about the fights and, what went down on Saturday night. First with that main event, David Benavidez versus David Morrell Jr. You were there in the corner of David Morrell Jr. And, that was a very close bout to me. had ebbs and flows in that particular fight. And it ended up with, Benavidez getting the decision. Now, just looking at it real quick, for me, it was a good back and forth bout there for the first 4 rounds. And there was an instance where David Benavidez had suffered a cut above his eye.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was like a key point in the bout because you kind of seen a shift in momentum there where, Benavidez had did some things to kind of like pick things up, afterwards. And David Morrell was more like a defensive mode. Kind of going to like that first half of the bout because it looked like it was like a lot, tit for tat, back and forth. Both guys were getting, what they needed as far as like offense was concerned up until that particular point.
Well, at the end of the day, I really believe had Morrell invested a little bit more in the body work because Benavidez was showing a very, very high guard. Obviously, he felt the power. You could see he got buckled a few times in the fight where his legs went out underneath him, not enough to put him down. But had Morrell went to the body more, would have opened up the headshots obviously a little bit more. And plus, if you take a little bit more out of the body, obviously you're not going to take the headshots as well. So if anything, that's where a little bit of inexperience came into play. Obviously, in your first 10, 11 pro fights, you're able to knock guys out with headshots. He was able to hit Benavidez with some good headshots. And then sometimes what happens is like, oh, man, I'm buckling with this guy. Sooner or later, I'm going to catch him. And if he had just invested in the body a little bit more, there's no doubt in my mind it would have been a different outcome. It was a great fight. It was a close fight. It was a competitive fight. Both guys landed some great shots. Hats off to Benavidez. He's a tremendous, tremendous fighter. I think he's pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world. But I think if we revisit the fight again at some point, I think they will get back in the ring again. I expect wholeheartedly that Morrell would be victorious. Like I said, 11 pro fights, and I think he learned a valuable, valuable lesson. You can't knock everybody out with headshots, but if you invest in the body to some capacity, the headshots will be that much more devastating and deadly. And I think that was the difference in the fight. Benavidez invested in the body big time, and Morrell didn't. And that was the difference in the fight. No two ways about it.
Yeah, I mean, you had that as far as like the body shots there from David Benavidez, but also he had a couple of elements there in his offensive game that was pointed out in the post-fight press conference. After that fifth round, and you had the thing there where Morrell was like at a high guard,
Mm-hmm.
and just stayed with that high guard.
Mm-hmm.
What Benavidez would do is he would reach out with his left and like paw with his left, bring down one of the arms, and then shoot with the right.
Mm-hmm.
Just paw and shoot with the right. And I think that that was something that was a key there. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, obviously, he got a lot of experience. Like I said, I've worked with Benavidez in the past. We know he had a lot of experience going in. But in my mind's eye, had Morrell just went to the body that much more, you would have took a lot of starch out of him. Some of the things he was able to do in the latter half of the fight, he would not have been able to do because the energy level wouldn't have been there. You got to hit the guy with some capacity of body shots. Not only that, and when you're doing that, you're opening it up, the totality of everything. Whereas Benavidez, all he had to do is go with a high guard here. He was giving the body up because we were never going there. And so he was able to kind
of. Oh, hold up. Seemed like he got cut.
I'm back on. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. No problem.
So he was able to kind of flop with the punches a little bit. Obviously, he knows that was the biggest puncher he's ever been in. And, whether he wants to admit it on camera or off camera, he knows that's the best fighter he's ever been in his life. And he knows the guy's only got 11 pro fights. So, I take it, I liken it to this. You give him his credit. He won the fight. They make the fight. But if you had Morrell with 27 pro fights and Benavidez was in his 11th pro fight, it wouldn't have been a decision. Morrell would have stopped him.
because it's like the styles was just crazy there. I was saying going into the bout that the dimensions for David Morrell had him at a real advantage, but it was like you said, not investing to the body.
He just didn't
Was
go to the body. If he would have went to the body, it would change the whole outcome of the fight. And we're not saying you had to force it to the body, but you cannot win a high-level fight when you throw 20 body shots in a 12-round fight. For him to even do what he did at that level, only throwing 20 body shots, I mean, it's virtually impossible to win or even be competitive. So that tells you how great David Morrell can be. It's not that hard, to start investing in the body, work on going to the body. And it's not, it's something that's an easily fixed. Like, you can't teach punching power. You can't teach hand speed. You can't teach foot speed. You can't teach those things. But to go to the body, those are things that can be worked on in camp. It's an easy fix, a little bit of experience in that regard. And he's going to be very, very tough to beat going down the stretch.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I was very surprised that he didn't invest in the body there.
As was I. Me and Ronnie were employing him in the third round. Hey, you got to start going to the body. A lot, two things I think going. One, obviously, you only have 11 pro fights. So there's the experience in that. You've had your way for the most part your entire career where you're able to just stop guys with headshots up top. And then you see it happen a lot of times, even with guys that are good body punchers. Well, they'll catch a guy early in the fight and they think, what, sooner or later I'm going to catch him again. And then they get focused and zoned in one aspect of going after the headshots. And then sometimes it doesn't come to fruition. And then the next thing you know, you're at the short end of the stick. It happens more times than not.
Yeah, that's true. And the thing about it was I was looking for Morrell to kind of like utilize that in the fifth round. After I was saying here before you got on that I had noticed that there was a cut above the eye of Benavidez. So it was like if you mix the things up and have Benavidez be focused on protecting that eye,
the body's open.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was. But even before he got the cut, he was having the high guard. He had his cup, damn where up to as high as his chest could be. Obviously you get a little bit of protection from the body shots and so forth, and he was giving it up. And unfortunately, that's a hard lesson learned for David Morrell. That you have to invest in that. If you don't at the highest level, going to be very hard to be successful. But he knows that. He's a smart guy, and I'm sure it's a lesson that's going to be very well taken and learned, and he'll move forward from this point on.
Gotcha. Now you have some on the live chat. One person said that they through the 12 rounds they gave them 2 rounds. They said they were laying good shots here and there, but they said Benavidez wouldn't let him get momentum. Even when they stunned Benavidez, Benavidez would retaliate with crisper punches. Did you think like Benavidez was like very sharp over the course of that fight?
Yeah, it was sharp. He did what he had to do. All hats off to him. And he was very sharp with his punches, very composed, as he should be. A veteran that's been there, done that before, and that's where experience comes into play. A lot of the rounds were close. I mean, if you want to say, they were close rounds, you can make an argument one way or another to a degree. If you want to say Morrell, he only won 2 rounds. Okay, yeah, you're right. You score the rounds round by round, but they were very competitive rounds. They weren't blowout rounds. And as far as the punches, when they did land, Morrell hurt Benavidez more than Benavidez ever hurt him. You never see Morrell's legs go out. You never see Morrell's legs get buckled. But he had the experience. A good poker face, and he invested in the body big time. So that regard, that's fine. He won the fight. There's no two ways about it. Whether you want to say you gave him 2 rounds or you gave him no rounds, at the end of the day, he won the fight. And that's all that matters for Team Benavidez. But I will tell you this. In a lot of ways, Morrell got invaluable experience. He's a guy with 11 pro fights. And at some point, I think we're going to revisit this fight again. And it's probably going to be a lot different outcome when they do revisit it, because he wasn't the bigger puncher. His hand speed, if you want to say, was a little bit faster, not by much. Doesn't have the length, didn't have the foot speed. And again, had Morrell just invested in the body, Benavidez' punches wouldn't have been as crisp. One guy invested in the body wholeheartedly, and the other guy didn't. If you invest in that body wholeheartedly with the punching power Morrell has, you're not going to see Benavidez as crisp with those punches. That's for damn sure. And when you get buckled with shots and you've been hit with a lot of body shots, usually that's a telltale sign of when somebody's going to go down. But when you buckle them and you've done no body shots, well, and then everybody, well, he's in great condition and recover. Yeah, because there's no investment in the body. But that was the mistake of Morrell. And therefore, that's why the rounds came out. And to the caller's point, Benavidez was crisper with the punches, of course, because he had more energy in the tank because he invested in the body and the other guy didn't. I mean, it's not hard, rocket science to figure out.
Word.
JR, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, academic.
Yeah. How you doing, Coach Santos?
Great.
Yep. So one thing that I noticed, which could be me, but it appeared that in the championship rounds, Morrell had a lot in the tank. What do you have to say, or what are your thoughts on, like, so my opinion was, could he have given more in the earlier rounds to sort of separate himself more?
100%. You're right on the money. He should have started backing him up by the 5th and 6th round, because even at that point, even in the exchanges, Benavidez was a little crisper, a little bit more experienced, but the heavier handed guy, the bigger puncher, was Morrell by far. The other guy's legs were getting buckled. He hit us with some great shots. You've never seen us get buckled. He got buckled. He had the heavier hands. He was the stronger guy. Should have started pushing him back, and you hit the head on the nail, but that comes with experience. Ronnie asked for it in the corner. We asked for it in the corner, but the experience was just a little bit lacking there. And then obviously we were behind. We're not going to lie to him and said, hey, we're behind. We need to get the knockout now. We got the knockdown in the 11th round. Now, a lot of people will say he really wasn't hurt. Doesn't matter. It was ruled a knockdown. Okay, so you got a little bit of a momentum. Now you're going into the 12th psychologically. Then we get hit after the bell, and we retaliate after the bell. And the thing is, well, you hit him way after the bell. It doesn't matter. You can't hit after the bell, whether you did it 2 seconds after the bell or 8 seconds after the bell. So at that point right there, I thought the referee should have just been, both guys did it, regardless if one guy did it 10 seconds after or 5 seconds after. Let us get back to the corner. Let us revive the guy and let us get going instead. And we had some momentum going into that. And that kind of changed the momentum. Now, definitely we needed a knockout to win the fight at that point, no two ways. But you got the knockdown. You're feeling a little bit confident about yourself. Momentum's going your way. And now the rest of the round, we can't talk to the guy. He's making the guy stand up. Benavidez is getting rest. And, unfortunately, I think the 12th round would have been a lot more heated and a lot more better had that not taken place. I think they should have just been either take points from both of them, but let them get back to the corner, or a no call. I didn't agree with that at all.
Probably like a warning for both sides, basically.
Or take point, or let him at least get back to the corner. Instead, you had one guy standing up in the 12th round of a fight where the other guy gets to sit down, get water, get ice, get resuscitated. And, we're over there standing. We can't give instructions, and we're behind. We need to get a knockout. So, and that kind of took the momentum from us. And psychologically, you just lost a point. You're behind. You don't get back to your corner. And I think that robbed us of an even much more explosive 12th round.
But do you think he hurt him with that shot though, enough to where Benavidez?
I don't think he was hurt with a lot of other shots in the fight where he got buckled. I don't think he was hurt with that shot, but it was ruled a knockdown. And psychologically, during that moment, as a fighter, you start to feel good about yourself. And when you're feeling good about yourself, good things can happen. So regardless if he hurt him with the shot or not, and I know Benavidez, I know him pretty well. I worked with him. I don't think he was hurt with that shot. He was hurt with some other shots early on, for sure, where his legs kind of went out. But I think it would have been much better to have not taken a point after that bell thing. I think we'd have had a much better 12th round. And that being said, and Morrell, like I said before, he's got to learn to invest in the body more. You can't knock everybody out with headshots, especially at this level.
Yeah. And you got like one on the shout out to Clarence McClain from No Doug Zone podcast. He said, "Hey, David Morrell did well, but people find reasons to complain, I guess, with the whole thing as far as like the wide decision." And Who the Kid TV says Morrell did awesome. It's just experience played a major factor there.
That's what won the fight. Exactly. The inexperience of knowing to go to the body. And plus, though, too, when you're able to hit guys with big headshots and you see them visibly get shaken up, a lot of times you fall in love with that and you think all of a sudden you're going to knock them out. It's the same thing. I know there's a lot of basketball fans out there. You start knocking down a couple threes, and then all of a sudden, all you do is shoot threes. And then when they don't start to fall, you're like, oh, shit, now I'm behind. So you still got to get to the paint once in a while, baby, and get some and ones.
That is true. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, and the thing is, like, after the fight, a lot, both of them, gave each other kudos. It was like I said, it was an awesome fight. And all I'm thinking about is what could be next there for both fighters.
I think Benavidez is going to fight the winner of Bivol, Better BF. No, I think that's what's going to take place there. Hopefully, Morrell can get maybe the loser of that fight. And then we'll see how that plays out when Benavidez fights either Better BF or Bivol. If it's a great fight, I'm sure they'll have a rematch. But once that's done, at some point, I think they're going to have to revisit this Morrell fight. And I think you're going to recognize they're going to do everything known to man. Say, no, we beat him so convincingly. We did. Well, yes and no. You had a good victory. It wasn't a one-sided ass whooping. You got buckled a couple times in that fight. And let's not forget something. It was a guy at the time that had 11 pro fights. Kudos to you to beat a guy that's that talented to fight you with 11 pro fights. But I reckon to think it's going to be a lot different after he got the experience of that fight. And obviously, you'll move on with your career. And by the time we revisit it, we'll at least have another 2, 3, or 4 fights of experience in the bank when we revisit that in the rematch. And so I venture to say he's going to do everything known to man from now on to avoid David Morrell.
Now, we have something here also from Who the Kid TV says, Peace Morrell should build back up and revisit in a year or two. It would be a mega fight and would be big paydays for both fighters.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that, like I said, that they're going to do everything they can to avoid Morrell. As I would too, if I'm managing a guy, until we're actually forced into that corner. But when there's nothing left on the table, one thing about Benavidez, he does have heart and balls. They'll try to find the path of least resistance for the most part. But at some point, I think they're going to have to revisit it. And I think when that happens, they'll do everything to avoid it. But at some point, they're going to have to revisit it. And I think they're going to both be back in the ring at some point.
For sure. I mean, yeah, it's definitely a fight that I want to see again. I'll tell you that. No, it's definitely.
Well, just imagine how much better it could be when goes and fights Bivol or Better BF. He beats him. Obviously, his stock's going to go through the roof. And then with Morrell to get a couple more fights like that, or fight a Bivol or Better BF, whoever the loser is, plus the experience that he just got with Benavidez, and now to get another fight like that, or 1 or 2, 3 more fights of experience. And now with both guys, high-level athletes with great experience going into the ring, I think we're gonna have just a barn burner.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, have to see what's gonna happen on February 22nd with Beterbiev and Bivol, and then afterwards they'll see if they'll work out something there within the division to where the winners face each other, the losers face each other, and then they'll have a round robin right there. Because I was like, after seeing that fight on Saturday, you saw 2 guys that were without question in the top 4 of the light heavyweight division.
Yeah, there's no 2 ways about it. And not only that, not just in the light heavyweight division, you've seen guys in terms of quality, just great athletes, great fighters, great they combine everything. To me, they're top pound for pound fighters in the top 15. obviously Benavidez now with his win here, I think he rises all the way up to beat a guy like Morrell with that kind of amateur pedigree, that kind of athleticism. I think he rises way up the pound for pound list. And Morrell is as good as it gets with anybody in any weight class. And let's just look at it this way. How many guys do you know? How many guys with 11 pro fights right now could take on Tank? How many guys with 11 pro fights right now could take on Usyk? How many guys with 11 pro fights right now could take on Inoue? Give David Morrell Jr. big time props for what he did.
For sure. I mean, I was going to say something, but actually we had almost a similar example there. I think it was last year with Terrence Crawford fighting Majumov.
Yeah,
Majumov only had those about 11.
Yeah, he didn't come up. He didn't come up with the victory, but there's not too many guys can do what Majumov did and what Morrell did. I love Canelo. I think he's a tremendous fighter. I love Terrence Crawford. I love me some Terrence Crawford. I mean, I have all the respect in the world for Terrence Crawford. If you take Terrence Crawford in his 11th pro fight and have him fight Majumov, does he beat Majumov? I don't know, but it's going to be very, very tough. If you take Canelo in his 11th pro fight, could he beat a guy like Benavidez in his 11th pro fight? I don't think so. Maybe he could prove me wrong. So for those guys to do what they did in their 11th pro fight, I mean, hats off to those guys. It's unbelievable.
Word. Now I have a question here. It says, what do you have to say about people questioning if Coach Ronnie Shields is right fit for Morrell? And I've seen this question before, like on social media too. Someone told me that. I'm like, come on.
Look, Ronnie's a great trainer. To me, he's a Hall of Fame trainer. I worked with Ronnie Shields. I worked with Emmanuel Stewart. I worked with Joe Goosen. I've never worked a corner with Freddie Roach, but I was in his gym for about 8 years. I've been around a lot of great fighters. Ronnie kept it 100 with him. We asked him to go to the body. It's up to him to follow what is being told to him to do. Ronnie gave great instruction in the fight. He said, look, he told him to go to the body. Unfortunately, he didn't. He told him to start backing him up. Unfortunately, he didn't. Then when Ronnie told him how to keep it 100, you're losing the fight. You got to back him up. That's when Morrell all of a sudden the switch flipped and he started backing him up. And he realized like, oh shit, I am the bigger puncher. I am the stronger guy. But it's too late in the fight. So we can't blame Ronnie Shields. And I know what people are going to say, the Cubans. Look, Ronnie Shields been around. He's worked with a lot of guys. He knows what he's doing. And at the end of the day, David Morrell is just a little bit of a lack of experience, or he got a little just too gun happy for the head. Whatever the case may be, it's a lesson that he's going to learn. And as long as Ronnie Shields wants to stay the head guy, I think he's earned the right to stay the head guy. Not just what he's done with David Morrell, but what he's done in the past. And I'm a big believer in Ronnie Shields.
Gotcha. We got another panelist here that's been part of the Boxing Source podcast. Has been here, since the beginning, just like the Boxing Academic. We call him the resident chef of the Boxing Source. Here is Brother Terrell in the building. What's up, Terrell?
Hey, what's up, everybody? How's everybody doing?
Great.
Doing well.
Yeah, I just caught the tail end of what my man was saying, and I kind of get to even just I didn't get to hear everything. I definitely get the gist of it, but I mean, for one, there's a big gap in experience between these two fighters. We know Benavidez, coming into that fight, 29 fights, undefeated. Morrell coming in with 11 fights, undefeated, and everything at that point, or 10 fights, whatever it is. But I mean, and Morrell's a phenomenal athlete, phenomenal boxer, great background, and I have nothing bad to say about Shields at all. Nothing bad to say. This to me, this is about these two fighters who gave us a great fight, right? But I think one of the telling differences in the fight was the pinpoint accuracy of Benavidez. I mean, for one, if anything, Shields probably could have told him the guard for those uppercuts that would just kind of go on and on and on and on and on. There was so many uppercuts in that fight that were effective. But I mean, but it's just a whole combination of pinpoint actually by Benavidez that was really the telling point of this fight. Morrell definitely caught up to him in those mid rounds, and I think everybody here could agree that when was the last time, if ever, that you ever seen someone back up Benavidez? I was like, whoa, what the hell is going on? But that just shows you the kind of fighter that Morrell is. He definitely had that youth on his side too. That like I said, that's what showed up in those mid rounds. But it was just a great fight. And if these guys fight again somewhere down the line, I would love to see it, and everything. But it's a great fight.
Yeah, I agree with you and wholeheartedly in everything you said. There's no doubt that Benavidez was the crisper puncher going down the stretch and putting things together. And the big reason for that, in my mind, is Morrell didn't invest in the body enough. Had he invested in the body, it's very hard when you're getting sapped with some hard leather down to that downstairs to be as crisp with your punches going down the stretch. And I think had he invested in the body more, Benavidez wouldn't have been able to be so crisp with those combinations. And but that's to me a lesson learned for Morrell, and it's something that he's going to have to really ponder on, and he's going to have to live with moving forward. And he could do two things about it: he can make a change to his game, or he could continue to do the same that he has. And if he does that, he won't. You know, you'll beat the B level guys, but the A+ guys, you're going to fall short all the time unless you invest upstairs and downstairs. Got to be a little bit of both.
Yeah, even that on that note, with Benavidez, he's never been a chiseled fighter, a heavy muscle fighter. That's not him. That's not his physique. That's not his DNA, right? But what he does do, he's able to balloon up. One, he can shrink back down to what is it, 168, 175, and then go back up and probably hydrate back up to what 190 probably coming
Oh
in
no,
fight night.
he was probably at least a good, probably 14, 15 pounds bigger than
Yeah.
us that night. But that being said, believe it or not, Morrell was the stronger guy. When they got into like where he had to push him, I know Benavidez. I worked with him. He talked to me off record, it was just me and him talking a little bit after the fight. He said, that's the biggest puncher I've ever been in with my life. And I couldn't believe how strong he was. And he admitted to me, he goes, I just couldn't believe he didn't go to the body. Had he went to the body, it'd probably been a hell of a lot different outcome, but he didn't do it.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm victorious, and he moves on. And I think both guys' stock went up, no two ways about it. But obviously, the guy that wins, his stock's going to go a hell of a lot further than the guy that loses. And Morrell's just going to have to get back to the drawing board and work his way back up the ranks.
Yeah, you mentioned it there with David Benavidez, and you talked about it in the post-fight press conference that, yeah, David Morrell was the hardest puncher that he's faced over the course of his professional career to this point, and that.
Well, I'm gonna tell you this: he didn't. I don't know what he's gonna tell the people in person. He didn't have to. I didn't care whether he admitted it or not. On the cameras, or even if he did it, which he did talk to me about. With nobody around. But even if he didn't, you ain't got to tell me. I was in the corner. I seen those legs go out a few times. So, he wouldn't have had to say it, but he did. And Morrell's just going to have to learn from that. You got to bang that body.
Yeah, for sure. And just real quick, thanks for everyone that's listening live here through the Boxing Source podcast. You can hit the like button. You can hit the share button there, and it'll also be available in audio form here later on down the line there. So just real quick, the Fuda Kid says Morrell has power from above. He says you can tell that's his natural weight class. He says he sees Morrell, Benavidez, Bivol, and Artur as the top four in the division.
Yeah, I think the same. I think Benavidez will get the winner of Better BF Bivol. I think Benavidez will beat the winner of Better BF and Bivol. And I think at some point we're going to revisit Morrell versus Benavidez again. And obviously, I'm somewhat biased. I work with both guys. You know that. I'm very close with Benavidez, and I'm with Morrell. And but I think with the experience, and if he makes that adjustment, I think the next time he fights, he's going to be victorious, and we'll probably have a trilogy.
Yeah, gotcha. 404. We're about to hit you up here on the hotline here a little bit. Now, what you were talking about there last, Coach Bob, got Z Pacino saying probably delusional, but I picked Morrell for the upset, and I pick him again for the rematch. He says he feels like that he would have stopped Benavidez, but it never happened.
The big mistake was, again, whether it's inexperience, whether it's you caught him with a headshot, you buckled him and you think you're going to catch him for a clean knockout, or a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost impossible to win a big time fight like that when you don't invest in the body. But that shows you how good Morrell is, that he didn't throw. I mean, even if you don't land body shots, but you're attacking downstairs, you're forcing his guard to go up and down with level changes.
Yeah.
And we didn't do that, and it would have opened the headshot up even more. Now, if you're landing the body shots and then you go for the kill shot, you're in a much better position. But he just didn't go downstairs, or even give the appearance of a lot of throwaway punches downstairs. And it's very hard to win a fight against a guy like Benavidez, one-dimensional. And when you look at that, though, it was still a competitive fight.
Yep.
And on top of that, Benavidez had a high guard throughout the fight. So there were angles that were there to get those kidney shots in.
He gave the body.
Yep.
He gave the body because he wasn't even trying to throw throwaway punches there. So Benavidez is a smart guy. I'm going to give it up. Let's see what he does. And he didn't do it. So that's where Benavidez's experience came into play, for sure.
All right. We got a caller on the line. Hopefully you got him on 404. What's going on?
Yeah. What's going on? This is Coach Eddie. How's it going, man?
Yeah, what's going on, Coach Eddie?
Podcast, man. Hey, good on everything. Good job, Morrell. Hats off to him. What I've seen, good fight. Me personally, I went back and rewatched the fight. I scored it 5 rounds to 7. I think 2 judges had it 4-8. I found another round I gave it to Morrell. I think what happened was, at some point in time, I think it almost turned into a pissing contest. As though I think David was trying to out-monster the monster. It was a little machismo there also that I've seen, I recognized. Basically, I think I seen Morrell, he fought different. I think he gave a lot of shots away. He gave David a lot of free punches. Simply sticking his head out there and just daring him to hit it. And when they hit it, it's basically saying, hey, it's not favoring me, but at the end of the day, it's still scoring points.
Yeah.
And he gave away a lot of stuff. I think he's machismo. I think there's a lot of machismo. And when he goes back and look at that fight, he's going to see the fight was in his grasp. And the reason why it was such a good fight, because it had the feel that at any moment that Morrell could land something good that could change the fight. I didn't feel like Benavidez had that, because Benavidez hit him with everything, all the power punches, that never changed Morrell. His legs never buckled or anything. Benavidez was the one that was getting buckled. When David Morrell was landing the shots on him. So I'm like, I didn't think that Benavidez had the capability to knock out Morrell. I felt Morrell had the capability to drop and maybe stop Benavidez if he would have put his punches together just a little bit more. So I think he got into a little macho thing. And I think David, that's the experience. David, you get experience of sucking into that type of fight, trying to make it a mano instead of using all your attributes, because Morrell didn't use all the tools. He didn't. That's my opinion.
Well, I mean, I got you on that front. Morrell didn't use all the tools. I felt like Benavidez did from an offensive perspective. And, told this Coach Santos here earlier that, you had those moments where Benavidez would, utilize a tactic that, some like tall fighters would use with the long reach is if they have someone with a high guard, what they'll do is they'll utilize their lead hand with the jab, and they'll pull down the guard of one of the hands with that high guard and then shoot with the right. That's one of the things that Benavidez did, over the course of that mid part of the fight. And then the other thing that was implemented on there, and they mentioned it in the post-fight press conference, was he did what I call an overcut punch. You have the uppercut punch, and then you have what I say is an overcut punch. which is you start like you're throwing a hook, but you're gonna go up and then you end downward with the punch. So it would kind of like hit the top of your head. So that's what Benavidez was doing now.
Well, like Coach Eddie said, I agree a lot of what he said, and well, it's great to have a lot of knowledgeable people out there. And with Coach Eddie, we should have had him come to the gym because he's on the money about a lot of the stuff that he's talking about right there. And so hopefully Morrell, takes some good lessons from this and can expand and get himself in a better position moving forward down the line. I'm sure he will.
Yeah, well, it's kind of curious too. There's a post fight clip with Benavidez going back to the dressing room. So and granted, he's just out of the fight. So some guy said, was it easier than what you thought it was? He said yes. I mean, I don't believe that. That was a tough fight. It was a tough fight. Of course, he got the win, unanimous decision, but it was not an easy win, nowhere near it.
Well, right after the fight, they said, did he hit hard? And then right after the fight, he says, off the record, he talked to me, but right after the fight, he says, no, I thought he was going to hit harder than that. Then he got to the press conference and he's like, well, he's the biggest puncher I've been in. Again, I don't really care what he's going to say. People say things in the media. I know Benavidez. He's a real good guy. I lived with him for a time, so I know him real well. I know his body reactions. I know what's going on. He knows damn well it was a tough fight. And he knows damn well Morrell is a hell of a puncher. He knows that. And he knows he was in with a special fighter. And I think he also knows, thank God I'm fighting this guy in my 11th pro fight. He knows that.
Yeah, and just take a quick look at Morrell's resume. His best fighters against, of course, Gvozdyk, Andrade, blowout win, Caleb Plant, solid win, not a big puncher. David Lemieux, no, not going to mention that at all. Anthony Durrell, top fighter, but once again, not a big puncher like that. So, that's definitely his best one to date.
It was the best fighter he's ever fought with a
Yeah,
guy with 11 pro fights.
Hey, you got some else, Coach Eddie?
Yeah. I want to add one more thing. I think all roads are going to definitely lead back to Morrell for the simple fact that they mentioned going to cruiserweight with Benavidez. I don't think he has a future there. I mean,
no, at the end of the day, like most guys, I don't even think he's contemplating that right now. I think he wants to dominate the 175-pound division. Here's what I think. They're talking about that they don't care about Canelo. I think he would come down for the Canelo fight if he had the opportunity. He knows he's probably not going to get it, so therefore he's just acting like, oh, it's not a big deal. And I think he's using leverage, saying, hey, I'll go up to to cruiserweight if I don't get what I really want at light heavyweight. So to me, it's negotiational tactics. I think he wants to stay at 175 pounds. In a perfect world, he'd want to fight Canelo at 175 because Benavidez is a very, very big guy. He's a big guy coming down.
Yeah.
Takes nothing away from his talent or skill set because I've seen him in there with cruiserweights. I've seen him in there with heavyweights. Like I said, I've been around him day to day. He's a tremendous fighter. But I think those are more using tactics for leverage, negotiation. But the reality of it is if I had to put money on it, he wants to be at light heavyweight. Canelo would be target number 1 if he would come up. Not going to happen. Target number 2 is the winner of Better BF and Bivol to unify and try to reign as long as he can at 175 pounds.
That's right. But yeah, that's all I have. But thanks for having me on, man. Salute to you.
Yeah,
Thank you, man. God bless you.
God bless you.
Yeah, that was Coach Eddie there. Shout out to Coach Eddie. And you got Lance Meyer in the chat says there's only gonna be one winner in the ring on the night. The fans won. Anybody that got the pleasure of watching that fight won. It was exactly what it was expected to be. A fight of the year contender. That's what I was looking for, and that's what we exactly got.
That's right. That was right. Guys weren't running around the ring. They boxed, they exchanged, they banged. They gave us a little bit of everything, and so obviously the fans won. It was a great fight, and that it was great for the sport of boxing. And And so we're very thankful for that. That's the sport I love. And as well as I can tell everybody that's involved in this podcast right here, talking to us, watching us, giving a commentary. And thank God for all of you and the sport that we love.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And actually, what I wanted to do while I had you on here, I was gonna talk about the coach feature bout after this, but we're
Yeah.
gonna table that for a little bit because I wanted to go into the first bout that was on the pay-per-view portion of the card there with Jesus Ramos Jr. and Jason Rosario.
Sure.
You did have the thing there with Jesus Ramos Jr. getting the stoppage win there, but the thing about it was for me, the story there was with Jason Rosario. Of course, we talked about it leading into this fight there with Jesus Ramos, that he felt like he had a lot on the line here in this particular bout. And
Sure.
he like going into that, he was there, he was in shape, he was ready to go, and he was there willing to fight. You know what I mean? So you seen that he was not, I would say, there to lay down, as they say, right?
Oh no, you look it. We took a lot of big shots early on in the fight. I thought we had a great game plan going into the fight. We started off with a nice, clean right hand to the body, and the referee can change things, subconsciously or consciously, where he's, hey, you got to keep it up. You got to keep it up. And Ramos was hitting us on the bout line, hitting us on the hips, and it was allowed to happen. We barely did it one or two times, and right away it's like, hey, you got to keep it up. You got to do this. And, that can affect the mindset of a fighter. And take nothing away from Ramos. He's a great fighter. He's a top fighter in my mind. The fight that he had with Lubin, a lot of people don't know this. I know this for a fact. The guy had the flu going into the fight. It was a close fight. Could have went either way. That's the only loss of his career. He's a very creative lefty. He's got pretty good leg movement. He's one of the best in and around the weight class. So it was a tall order for us to go in the fight. That's why the betting line started out as a 25-1 underdog. But to me, for Banana to have been stopped 3 times, out of boxing for 2 years, come back, get a draw, go into that type of fight, that tough of a fight, make it all the way almost to the distance. We were on our feet. The referee chose to stop the fight.
Yeah.
I had asked them and employed them early on in the rules meeting. I asked them specifically, I says, look, I know my fighter. I know what we've gone through to get here. We had some grueling sparring sessions. There may be a time that he goes down, but do me a favor. I've been with him every day. I know what he's went through. I know what we've went through to get to this point. I've been doing this 30-something years. Can you do me the favor? If he gets hurt and he's down, by all means, you see his eyes, stop the fight. I got it. But other than that, give me the common courtesy to stop the fight. If I think he's going to get hurt, 100% I'm going to stop the fight. But I know my fighter. Give me the discretion. I'm with him every day. You're not. They told me they would, and unfortunately, for whatever reason, that's not what happened. As you could see, he wasn't flopping all over the ring. He was still on his feet. He was right there. He fired a few punches back. At that point, it was in the next round. He wasn't hurt. So I'm at a loss, because if that's the case, well, then let's just stop the fight 2-3 rounds before.
Songs that I'm going to use.
But it was Sorrel. What was that? Yeah, Z Pacino was mentioning it while you were talking about it. Premature stoppage. Corner should have called it, not the ref. Yep.
That's what I had told him. If I felt like he would have started going down a little bit more, taking a little, of course I would stop the fight. Look, I had Joel Casamore against Timothy Bradley, and I felt he was taking too much punishment with Miguel Diaz, the co-feature Manny Pacquiao Marquez. And what do? We stopped the fight. I'm always going to look out for the safety of my fighter. But I think as a corner, I'm with the guy every single day. I think I know a little bit best. I mean, I understand you're the referee. We have to go with the decision that you make. That's the decision they made, and I'll live by that. But I think unless you see his eyes rolling back, you see something, he can't respond to you, of course, stop it. But if he's responding to you, he's giving everything you need. He's on top of his feet. He's not flailing all over the thing. He's a former unified world champion. We're not talking about a 4 and 6 round fighter. And he's a big puncher. It's not a guy that can't punch. He can't change the punch with one fight. Did it look like it was going to happen up to that point? Maybe not. But you could say that about the fight with the kid with that had fought Luis Nunes. He was losing virtually every single round. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it does happen. He caught the guy in the 10th round and stopped him with both body shots. So with a round and a half to go, at least afford us the opportunity to give us that shot. And if I thought he was taking any much more punishment that I thought was unnecessary, I'd stop the fight.
Coach, could I ask you a question and sort of push back on one point that you're making? So my perspective is that watching Bananas, let's say last 3-4 fights, in some of the fights, he looked like he may be getting to the point where he's compromised neurologically, like he get hit with shots and he get buzzed a lot quicker than like what I'm used to seeing him, do in the past. And so do you think it would be justified from the ref's perspective to protect him in that sense, where he probably looked at Banana as, being compromised, with those shots, because whatever type of concussion that you get, and that he was essentially trying to like protect him. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I had told him in the locker room, and I'll say it again. Look, I know my fighter, I think, better than anybody. I'm with him every single day. If it's to the point where he can't respond, he's okay. I understand that. We prepared. We're at a high level. We know what we're in this sport for. And if I thought he was taking too much, I would have done that. But I told him, I know my fighter. So, example, 3rd round, he got hit. He had a little bit of blood. So I realized he has a busted eardrum. So I knew that going in there though, too. So it's going to be a little bit somewhat with the eardrum, but I know Banana could punch. I know what kind of shape he was in. I know the price that he paid. He had paid for this fight. And I know what he wanted, and I have to respect the wishes of the fighter. Now, like I said, if I would have seen him taking too much punches, I love Banana. He's like a family member to me. I'm not going to allow that to happen. Just like Casamore. I was with Casamore for the better part of a lot of years with him, where he lived with me. And when I seen Timothy Bradley stepping it up, where I said, you know what, it's just too much. I'll stop the fight. But when you have a big time puncher, we're going down to the last 2 rounds. He's taken 2 years and then getting back in here to get back into this position. And he's not wobbling and flopping all over the ring. I just find it hard pressed for you to take that right away from him. We got to understand, we know we're in a dangerous sport. Yes, we want to look out for the health and safety of the fighters, but we got to put on our big boy pants here, guys, and realize that this is what we're in. It's not for the faint of heart, and that's why some guys can't rise to the top.
Now on that note, because I want to talk about Rosario's mindset going into the fight.
Sure.
And this goes into like well before, actually, because you had the fight there with Jared Hurd. But
sure,
I want to talk about, like, I'll pull it back from when I talked with Samson Lukowitz some time back about Jason Rosario and the point where he was in his life after having the loss to Charlo.
Sure.
It was like a real dark time, right?
Yep.
And so he had to like really come from bad times to actually get to the point where he was to have the Jared Hurd fight.
That's right.
And then you go into fight week. And for those that may have noticed, if you look at what he was wearing for the workout, for the press conference, and probably like for the weigh,
sure,
Jesus stage, like he turned the faith in order to get back to a great spot in his life, a good spot in his life.
Sure.
And I think, going right before the fight, like he had like a moment to like get him going to like say, hey, you know what? I made it this far, and it
Yeah,
was
we got 2 rounds to go. I
yeah.
mean, and here's the other point to that. When have you ever seen Ramos in any fight that he used his legs that much in a fight with that much movement? You know why that was? Because Banana can punch. That's why that was. Most times he's walking guys down or he'll stick his head right on their chest and bang with them. He didn't do that with Banana. Didn't do that because he felt that punching power. So obviously, like I said, Banana's got a puncher's chance. There's only 2 rounds to go. If he would have picked it up where I seen he couldn't have done that, I would have stopped the fight. And I asked them to give me that right because hey, I'm with him every day. A referee, if you're seeing his eyes roll back, if you're seeing a gloss that he's not responding, stop the fight. But outside of that, you're not with him every day. You're not watching every sparring session. You're not talking to him every day. You're not on the runs with him every day. I am. And I think and I think I've earned that right, and he's earned that right as a fighter to give us the discretion. Now, if it, like I said, if it's his eyes are rolling back, he's glossy, he can't answer, by all means, stop the fight.
And one thing I'll say too, just speaking from a fan's perspective, I had the opportunity to see Rosario Hart her live, and upon seeing both those guys, the last thing for one, it didn't even enter my mind to see that either one of these guys are shot or damaged or just taking too much damage. Ring that did not enter my mind at all. These guys are live. First few rounds were just probing, and then fighting after each other in those middle rounds. Both of them took some good shots, and not either time where I observed Rosario, I said, "Man, he's shot." Not that didn't enter my mind. So yeah, so I definitely back up your points on that, Coach. Definitely.
So unfortunately, it is what it is. We'll live with what the referee did, and so uh, again, it was tough. I felt bad for Rosario because obviously he was very, very disappointed. One, obviously losing, but two, he's like, I put everything in to get to this position with 2 rounds. Let me at least go out with everything I got. Because once we get to that last round or two, he can go for broke. Anything can happen at that point. And, we weren't afforded the opportunity. And that's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, you at least would have to have the ability to
Yeah,
have
and I'm not saying that he was going to knock Ramos out. For the most part, most everybody saying, well, the chance of that happening wasn't likely. You're right. It probably wasn't likely. It probably wasn't likely that, Julio Cesar Chavez was going to be able to stop Meldrick Taylor with the last 10 seconds. But that's why we make the fights. This is what we sign up for. And so people got to understand that, it's funny to me in life, in the sport of boxing, and it perturbs me a little bit because, I picked in the fields. My father worked construction in very physical jobs, and every day on the job site, people die, whether they're working in high capacity with electricians, whether roofers are going to work and they fall off the roof and they die. This is what people sign up for. They don't say, well, I don't like that rain coming down on my face. No, you want a roofer. Well, if a roofer goes up there at some point, somebody's going to fall off that roof and die. Somebody's got to put the electrical in. This is what they sign up for. This is what they live. This is what they go for. And people got to understand that. Why should it be any different for a fighter who chooses this? This is his walk of life. This is what he wants to do. This is what makes him live and vibrant and what he loves to do. That's why you have a good corner around you and good people around you to look out for your best interests. But when you're going to always have people who haven't put the work in, who have no vested interest in it, well, it's easy for them to say, and their livelihood's not on the line. Oh, well, I don't like that. This is too much. And I think this and I think that. But you're the same guy that wants a roof over your head. And there's a roofer that's going to fall off the roof tomorrow night and die. And we're not going to stop people from being roofers. We're not going to stop people from being electricians. We're not going to stop people from racing cars around the track, which is as deadly as it can get. So, I mean, we're grown men here. We know what we sign up for. And you got to give the right for the guy to give everything he's got to have an opportunity to win, and just take that away from people. I'm not with that.
Yeah. You know, if like you said, if they look like they could still, properly do what they need to do, you got to give them a chance. You gave those examples. Of course, you had that first Claressa Shields fight. That's another prime example.
And that's what I'm saying. People say, well, that wasn't going to happen. Well, you never thought that Julio Cesar Chavez was going to stop Maldrick Taylor either. And I can go on and on and on and on again. So, yeah, most likely it's not going to happen. But one thing we know for sure, it's sure the hell ain't going to happen if the guy's not afforded the opportunity.
Yep, that's very true. That's very true. And, we got to see, like, how Rosario, reacts to this.
Well, I'll give you another example, too. Ramos, you guys could get him on the show. He came up to me right after the thing. He goes, Santos, I have all the respect in the world for you. And it wasn't I didn't think it was a good stoppage either. Because when I was hitting him, I could see he was responding. And I didn't feel like I was shaking him up after that. You can ask him that. That was his words to me. So, I don't know what to say.
And, hey, I mean, he's a good kid, too. And, I talk to him.
Ramos is a great kid. I know him very well. I know the father very well. I know the mother very well. He's a great kid. He's an honest kid. He's a straightforward kid. And he told me, he says, I'm just shocked at the stoppage. He knows that. But, it is what it is. I guess this is the day and age that we live in now. I guess I grew up under different circumstances and different times. And I'm a firm believer when you put that work in, you allow the guy to afford him the ability and the opportunity to win the fight. Unless you see something that you really see, he's glossed over, he can't respond, his eyes are going back in his head, his eyes are going sideways and stop the fight. He can't stop the fight. That was never the case. Yeah, I'm sure anybody that's that's fair-minded knows that was not the case.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, that's the thing is, like, you with these two being competitors, you want them to have like something where it's definitive, if anything. You know what I mean? So
That's right.
So that's the thing as far as like referees, and they have that thing there as far as like having the mentality, oh, is it right for me to stop the fight or whatever it is. And it kind of like gets to that point that it gets very tough for some referees. But at that particular instance, you need to step in and stop the fight right there, because that's not much different than the fight that was on the non-pay-per-view portion.
Yeah, exactly.
Rico Polo and Christian Olivo, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So, everyone has said, well, shit, there's one round to go. He's done. He's lost every damn round. It's over. And then guess what? He wins the fight. That's why you got to fight these fights all the way through, all the way to the end. And now, look, I get it. If it's a 4-round fighter, it's a 6-round fighter, it's an 8-round fighter, you got to, okay, I kind of get it. Even then, I think they should be afforded the ability. When it's a former world champion who's climbed his way back, and then you got to think about this, and that's the other thing people don't think about. When you put that much, your heart, your soul, your energy, everything in and committed to winning, look how he got up from that knockdown. That tells you he was not coming to lay down. He took a big shot, got down, gets into the next round. He wasn't coming to lay down. That tells you about the commitment he did. And now think the rest of his life, he's always got to think that, I wonder what could have happened if I had those 2 rounds. He's got to live with that the rest of his life. Nobody else. Well, I'm looking out for your benefit. Well, guess what? You didn't sign up for what I signed up for. That's probably why you're never going to be a world champion, or we're never a world champion.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, because this particular fight was, it was, scheduled to be on there for 160, but this was like for positioning there at 154 pounds.
I mean, yeah, it's just, I feel bad for Jason. I was with him today. He's fine. He's great. And, so I'm happy for that. Everything's great, but, it's a tough pill for him to have to swallow for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, just seeing here, if you got like, a few more minutes to talk about the other 2 fights on the pay-per-view card, or want me to go straight to like your fighter there, John Easter, that was on the card.
John the Candyman, he got a great win. He fought a guy that had fought all undefeated guys, so that was a great win for John the Candyman Easter. So we're happy about that. Yeah, the kid that he fought, like I said, fought all undefeated, was 6-2 against all undefeated guys. And, that being said, one of the fights was very questionable. So he easily could have been 7-1 against all undefeated guys. And the other loss was a majority decision. So that just tells you the type of quality opponent that we fought for John early on in his career. And I think he got a lot of valuable experience from that fight.
Yeah, he did. He did. Was able to pick up the action there after round 3 and kind of show what he could do as far as like his hand speed and movement.
Yeah. Yeah, no two ways about it. And, so we're going to develop him and keep him moving. And John, very limited amateur background. So for him to accomplish what he's accomplished so far with his amateur background, we're real happy about that.
Yeah, no doubt. And I talked with him after the fight, and he says he wants to get right back into action out here. So we're trying to push to have him in the car here in a couple of months or something like that. So we'll see more there from Candyman John Easter on that front.
Sure.
Yep. Now going back to the pay-per-view portion of the card, I wanted to talk about Isaac Cruz versus Angel Fierro. That one, had
tough
the
fight.
That one had the build up there. What was at the workout? They had like a intense stare down at the workout. They had an intense stare down at the press conference, and then again at the weigh-in. So it was like, oh man, this is gonna be a fight, and it exactly was a fight there between two guys that absolutely refused to go down. Isaac Cruz, though, showed me a little bit more on offense as far as like his repertoire. And I was like, man, like he is a fighter. You know what I mean? But Angel Fierro just refused to go down.
Yeah, tough fight. A fight that Fierro could have won for sure. A lot of people think that he won that fight. But very, very competitive. Again, the fans were the winner that night. And man, maybe they'll have to run that one back.
Yeah. You had a moment there in the 4th round where Fierro, slipped and fell, right?
Yeah.
The referee wiped off the gloves. And then when action resumed, they went at it. I mean, they went at it. And after that, like the whole crowd was just screaming. And then you had another moment like that in the 9th round too, with both of them going at it. So it was, like you said, it wasn't. It was judges just gave a majority of those rounds to Isaac Cruz.
Yeah, unfortunately for Fierro, it turned out that way. But I know a lot of people felt that that Fierro won. Unfortunately, he didn't get the decision for him. The refs the judges seen it the way they seen it. But I think it was a great fight. I wouldn't mind watching that fight again. I'm sure everybody else wouldn't mind watching that fight again. So I think both guys' stock again went up. And so that's a good thing. And let's hope they can get back in the ring sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it definitely went up for both fighters there on that end. Because I think with Fierro, he was also a guy that was coming up from 135, if I'm not mistaken, for this particular bout. And of course, Isaac Cruz, previously had been at 135, won this WBA title at 140 before losing it to Raul Valenzuela. So this was his first fight back after that loss, and
sure.
He came back and had a great action with that. So yeah, I definitely would want to see that again. Definitely want to see that again. I mean, and then you had there the co-feature the rematch between Stephen Fulton and Brandon.
That surprised me. That fight surprised me more than any fight of the night.
Yeah, it did to me too.
Well, the reason the fight surprised me so much was, just as a layman, looking at it, hats off to Fulton because like in the case of Rosario, it's very difficult to bring a guy back from a knockout loss. Obviously with Rosario, I had to bring him back from 3 knockout losses. So that becomes, very, very difficult. But for Fulton to get knocked out by Inoue, then he had the fight with Castro. I didn't think he looked good in the fight with Castro. No disrespect to Fulton, but I didn't think he looked good in the fight. He got dropped in the fight. It was a decision to me that could have went either way. He got the nod. And so you had to figure, with Figueroa, they had the fight of the year. Some people thought he won. Fulton got the win, but it was the fight of the year. It was a barn burner. And now he's coming off a knockout loss, an iffy performance against Castro. And so therefore, that's why they make the fights though. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm favoring Figueroa in this fight because of the back circumstances. And he comes out and just fought a masterful performance. And I was surprised with that. That was the surprise of the night for me. But, credit to him. He did what he had to do. And he's in a great position moving forward with his career. He's a 2-time, 2 different division world champion.
Yep.
And he's in a tremendous position now. But that was the surprise of the night for me.
Yeah, I mean, my thing was I felt like, Fulton had something to prove because I was talking with them before the press conference. And, he had a story about him, after that loss to Iowa anyway. A lot of people deserted him.
Of course, that's boxing. You know what I mean? That's hey, getting back to your point when we're talking about Rosario and stuff like that, when these guys lose and everybody's like, well, just stop the fights, just do this. But it's very easy for you to say, I understand you want the safety of the fighter, as do I. Don't think I don't take in consideration the safety of the fighter, because I'm one of the guys, one of the few coaches that when fighters have been down on their luck, I'm not going to say names, that I've reached out to them financially. I've done a lot of things behind the scenes for people, but it's easy for these people to say these types of things and not know the backstory of these guys, not know where they came from, not know what they have to go through. And when things don't go their way and they're deserted, who's going to be there for them then? The same guy who's worried about the safety of him. Are you worried? Are you willing to help him? Are you willing to do these kind of things? But you want to make decisions behalf on the guy. And so that's why it bothers me a little bit. It's easy to be a virtue signaler. It's easy to be a virtue signaler. Oh, we're for the safety of the guy. But when he can't afford to feed his family, when he's doubting out on his luck, when everybody abandons him, spiritually and things of that nature, not there for him with compassion. What about that? So to your point about Fulton, I could just imagine when he lost anyway, how he got abandoned. I've seen it time and time again.
Yeah. And I mean, that goes into, I guess, I don't know if you were checking the chat here, because it was like someone had said, well, it's on this thing here, quote, Devin Haney. Well, I've seen this account before, but it's whatever. It says, Rosario needs to start thinking about his family, not himself. That's selfish. It's just a fight. Well, it's going back to what you said there, Coach. Boxing is, well, to me, boxing is a lonely sport. And you built yourself to a certain point on your own, right?
That's right.
Once you get to this point where you're trying to get back to, glory or be a champion once again, like, you'll do anything. And you ain't gonna just, quit. You ain't gonna quit in a fight, most definitely. So if you're at a point where, you know that you're behind in the fight, but you still gotta you gotta finish the fight. That's what
right.
they say.
And they have to, and you're right. You got to have that mindset. And then you got to have a good quality corner that you trust, that knows that they're going to put your interest ahead of their interest with the years of experience that they've been around. Not a guy who's just, I'm just watching you tonight. Were you in the camp? Do you know how he prepared for the fight? No, you don't. So unless you know for certain his eyes are glossed back, he can't respond, he's starting to look a certain way, okay, great, stop it. Outside of that, just to stop it saying, well, I think this could happen moving forward. Well, hell, that could happen in the first round with the first punch. That could happen at any time. This is the sport we're in. Well, I think if that football player, the linebacker, hits the wide receiver going over the middle, I think he can get hurt. Well, hell yeah, he can get hurt. But if we're not, we can't see into the future. And outside of that, you should be making decisions based on what you think is going to happen. Because at that point, then you're taking everything into your hands and you're robbing that guy of the opportunity. And I'm not for that.
Yeah, that's the thing about it. Like you mentioned it before in our previous conversations. You don't want to have a fighter thinking for the rest of their life, what if?
That's the worst thing that happens in life. When you give your absolute best, and for all you young people or boxing fans or just people in general in life, for me as a coach, I want to know I leave no stone unturned to prepare you for victory. Then I can, if we fall short, then I can live with myself. I'm okay with that. If we gave everything we could and we fall short, it is what it is. But I'll tell you something, if you're being honest with yourself and you know you cut corners and you know you did things that way, unless you don't have good moral character, that's a hard pill to swallow. To know you didn't give your best, because that's something that's going to stay with you the rest of your life. And I don't ever want that to be a part of my psyche. I give everything I can with these fighters. And you talk to any fighters when I'm not around that I've coached, and I can almost bet you to a man, they're going to tell you I gave everything I ever could for them. That's why guys like Robert Guerrero's 15 years old. He's 43. He's still with me. And there's a reason. Because they know I give everything I can. And I think when the fighter gives everything he can, you got to allow him to go out that way. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen. People take those decisions into their own hands, and to the detriment of the fighter, because he's got to live with that the rest of his life now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about that also when it came to fighters that contemplate retirement. As far as like if they go to you or they're around you and they think about it, that you kind of, stray away from all that, because you don't want to be that deciding factor for the fighter saying that he's retired and then later on down the line he's like, oh, I shouldn't have made that decision. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a decision I think only the fighter can make within himself. He can come to me for advice. I can advise him. I can tell him the pros and cons. But at the end of the day, that's something that he's really got to decide for himself. And again, who's to say Rosario may never get a shot to get back at this pay-per-view level? But, hey, it's for the betterment of him. And, well, I mean, if that's the case, let's stop all contact sports. If that's the case, I don't want anybody working on a roof because they can get hurt. If that's the case, I don't want anybody driving a car because there could be a car wreck. If we're going to live life that way, right, nobody's going to be able to do anything.
Hey, it's all about risk. That's my thing. It's all about risk. If you're scared,
life is about risks.
Yeah, if you're scared to take risks, then you really might not get the successes that you're looking for. That's how I put it. Hey, brother Terrell, you had something?
No, just one thing with the Fulton fight. I totally agree with that. But I said with him getting knocked out by anyway, and his last fight, he didn't do well like that. Early on in the fight with Figueroa last night, Saturday night,
he was unbelievable. Give Fulton his credit. He was unbelievable.
He was, but just for me early on with Figueroa fighting the fight that he's fighting that close quarter fight, I said, man, will Fulton be able to hold up to that for the entire fight and be successful? And
unbelievable.
And my only thought with that is like, well, you gonna fight like that, use that jab, pump that jab, but even he fought a great fight, but he kind of faded out a little bit towards the end, but he got it done. He got the job done. So kudos to Fulton for getting that done. And that dude got a big road ahead of him. He got Shushu Carrington waiting to fight him at the number one contender position.
Hey, and don't forget about my boy Luis Nunes. Yep. Luis Nunes is one of the top featherweights in the world. We had that great win on Pro Box. Matter of fact, the guy that got stopped on the undercard was winning every single round. We fought him when he was undefeated on 2 weeks' notice and beat him. Luis Neguita Nunez, the Dominican, he's going to be a tough out for anybody. He's a great puncher, got a great skill set. He's coming back out to camp. He'll be out here in the next couple of days and be looking for him. I'll put him against any featherweight in the world, and it ain't going to be no easy out. You can take that to the bank.
Yeah, that was there on the Pro Box card there, when he was able to have that win over Baez.
We dominated him much more than Ray Vargas did. That's for sure.
Yeah. So definitely, looking for more there with Luis Nunez to get him in there in that, first the top contender spot, and then fight for a world title.
Let's go. And I love Shushu. I love Shushu. I was seeing him the other night. What a great kid. Great personality, great smile. He's great for the sport.
Yeah. Shout out to Champ Ross in the live chat. Says, Nunez is tough, big puncher there. Big puncher right there.
Yeah, but that boy can punch. There ain't no two ways about it.
Yep. So definitely looking forward to more action out here from Luis Nunez there in the near future. So but that pretty much like summarizes that pay-per-view portion of the card there at T-Mobile Arena. And like you said, you were mentioning John Easter there with his performance. You seen Kermel Bolton that was on the YouTube portion of that card. Handling business. So that was something there to see. We mentioned a thing there with Mirko Coelho and Christian Olivo. That was a great fight. Coelho got knocked down, and like you were saying there, I mean, Olivo, at least to me early, you seemed like Coelho was having the boxing skill, but wasn't really affecting Olivo because early he was going, upstairs, a lot of headshots. So Olivo was like, taking those punches well and then throwing back, and he threw back with like more power.
Yeah.
So that's how Coelho got caught with that knockdown. And then that 10th round, Coelho went to the body, and it was like, oof. And then the thing, it was the first knockdown. Then Olivo got up. But when Olivo got up, he was still feeling the effects of that body shot.
Yep.
And Coelho saw that. He's like, oh, okay. Boom, right back to the body. And it was like, oh.
Hey, James, I'll tell you this, James. What we ought to do is take that film and send it to Morrell and say, body punching can be effective.
Yeah. So, I'll talk with Coach Ronnie on that. And they'll say, hey.
Ronnie knows, right? I mean, we were telling him he got to follow instruction. Ronnie knows he's a veteran. He's been around. It's up to the fighter to execute what needed to be done, and he implored him, and so hopefully he'll make that turnaround. But to all you guys, all those fans out there, don't forget, I got the Perot brothers. I call them the Cuban Klitschko's. I got Denier the Fear Perot. He's going to be coming. And don't forget about his brother, Lanier Perot. He'll be back in the ring. He had some contract disputes, got to number 4 in the world after we beat that undefeated Olympic Ukrainian. He's going to be coming out May 7th, fighting again on the zone. And Denier the Fear Perot and Elijah Garcia, March 22nd on Amazon Prime. So we got some great fights coming up. You guys could all follow me at Bob Santos Boxing to keep up with all our guys and hit us up and keep interacting with us. And we appreciate you guys.
Yeah, especially on Instagram. We'll have all the updates there on his Instagram page there, Bob Santos Boxing. So you can follow like all of his fighters and what's coming up there in the near future. I'm looking forward to the thing there with Elijah Garcia coming up here on the PBC telecast here coming up real soon too. So definitely got to follow up with that one.
You got it. God bless you guys, and thank you for everything.
Oh yeah, not a problem there.
You too,
thanks
Coach.
for coming on here once again, Coach Bob Santos, and we'll catch up with you here real soon.
God bless you guys. Thank you again for everything.
Thank you.
Not a problem. All right, there. That was your Coach Bob Santos there that was able to share time with us to talk about the fights there on that happened on February 1st. Of course, he was there in the corner there for David Morrell Jr. Also there with Jason Rosario, and we talked about a whole thing that happened there with Jason Rosario leading into this fight, and why having that stoppage was not really good there. You want to have it, as they say, have the fighter go out on the shield at the very least. You know what I mean? So we kind of like talked about that there at length. And the other thing too, with of course the Candyman John Easter, they're going 8-0 now, 8-0 with his win that he had there at the T-Mobile Arena. So that was what we had on that front. Now pretty much like summarized most of that card there on February 1st, but wanted to hear a few things there from Box Academic, because he was there on location at the T-Mobile Arena. And what were your thoughts about the experience out there at T-Mobile Arena?
I enjoyed T-Mobile Arena. The stadium itself, I would say, as far as most seats were good seats in terms of being able to see the fight. You definitely had a good energy. The crowd, if they didn't hear or see any action, they let you know it. And it was definitely a good Hispanic presence, supporting their fighters. So, I mean, it was definitely a good crowd, and people were definitely into the crowd. They was chanting stuff, and one side would chant, the other side would chant. It was nice environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had the fans there, in the main event for, of course, David Benavidez, and of course had a crowd there for David Morrell Jr. as well. And a few other fighters that were from Cuba, like Yoanli Hernandez, that was on the YouTube portion of the card, that he pretty much beat up his opponent there on that one. So that kind of like was like what was that? Who did he face? Yeah, it was like Angel Ruiz there, and yeah, he just beat him up there in that bout too. So all in all, a great card. I had missed Jose Benavidez Jr. His fight that he had against Danny Rosenberger with the 5th round TKO, because when I got there, I didn't know that they were like starting off, pretty much like before 1 o'clock. So by the time I had reached inside the T-Mobile Arena, that's when they had announced that the winner by 5th round TKO, Jose Benavidez Jr. I'm like, oh, what? Oh, man. So I had to rush up to where I had to get to. And at the time after that fight, it was the fight with John Easter, where he was able to have the win over Joseph Aguilar. So it was all in all a great experience there at T-Mobile Arena. Hopefully I will return back to T-Mobile Arena here later this year. I don't know if it's going to be for September, if they have a certain fight over at T-Mobile Arena in September. But we'll wait and see on that one. I'm trying to get in contact with another person that should be on the panel, but he hasn't responded yet. And I'm like, where in the world is he? Oh man, he probably sleep. He probably be asleep right now. Oh my goodness, because wanted to get to the next topic at hand. Yeah, man, had to get to this one. Of course, we had those fights at T-Mobile Arena on February 1st. But we also had a fight card that was at Flint, Michigan on February 2nd. And that particular fight card included a bout in women's boxing for the undisputed heavyweight title of the world, with Claressa Shields going up against Danielle Perkins. Okay. Of course, Claressa Shields is going in there. What was it? With the WBC belt. She had the WBC belt. She had the I guess a WBF belt or whatever it is. And then you had a couple of other vacant belts that were on the line for this particular fight here. And you had Claressa Shields there at currently at 15. Well, that was at 15-0, and Danielle Perkins going into the bout at 5-0. And a lot of people pretty much like say, you know what, this is a fight that, hey, Claressa Shields should, go ahead and see if she'll get the win, and see what goes on from that. So it was the. All right, hold up though. before I go into that, I'm looking at the chat and I see that there might be some breaking news. There might be some breaking news that maybe Lester Martinez might not be in the fight of the Pro Box card. Man, come on, man. Yeah, you didn't say that, champ. You didn't say that, champ. Tell me you did not just say that Lester Martinez pulled out of the fight with Joshawn James. That would be the second time that Lester Martinez pulled out of the fight against Joshawn James. Oh man, that's goodness, man. Yeah, I think it's just within. I'm looking at it social media. Within around 5 minutes ago. That's 5 minutes ago. But yeah, let's see. It said, yeah, confirmed with G Funky. There's an article on boxingscene.com. Yeah, because G Funky is around Joshawn James. They're around the Sacramento area. So a fight that was, I think, originally scheduled for November or probably earlier than that last year, that, was like a couple days before the fight was going to take place. Lester Martinez, pulled out. Pretty much was like that Wednesday or Thursday or something, I don't know, or something like that. And then now here we are, the week of when this fight's supposed to happen in San Antonio. Lester Martinez, I guess it's pulling out of the fight here once again. So I mean, that's something. That is something like real disappointed there. I guess whatchamacallit may have to just go ahead and move on and not really try to revisit the fight. It says illness again forces the postponement for Lester Martinez. Man, I don't know, man. This is almost like the situation where we could have had Virgil Ortiz Jr. versus Iamana Stanionis, and that fight got rescheduled a whole bunch of times, and eventually just didn't happen at all because of Virgil Ortiz Jr. missing fight dates and all that type of stuff. So yeah, it's insane. All right, so back at it with the fight here with Claressa Shields there and Danielle Perkins. As mentioned before, there with Claressa Shields going in there, of course, multi-division champion, undefeated. There was at 15-0 before this particular fight. They're at 29 years old, going up against Danielle Perkins, who was there at 5-0 at 42 years old. And a lot of people were kind of pointing that out as far as like the age discrepancy going into this fight, and that Claressa Shields would have been highly favored to win at this fight. But watch the fight, and Claressa Shields did score a couple of knockdowns in this fight. And yes, she did win this bout by clear decision, unanimous decision to become the undisputed champion there at heavyweight. But there was a few things to be desired in this particular fight, and the number of moments that we've seen there where, at least for me, I was like, ooh, that style that Danielle Perkins had for this really did give Shields a few problems. One being a southpaw, two being six feet with a reach of 72. A number of times she, was able to land well with the jab and then follow through with the left hand. It was just that she just, well, I don't think she had the particular energy to, let her hands go. And, being up there heavyweight didn't necessarily have the movement, going side to side. But you could see that, hey, that could be a style issue there for Claressa Shields. But the thing about it is who else are you going to have that's out there that's around 6 feet with a reach of 72 or something like that? Like that really happens there in women's boxing. But still, with that being said, you still have Claressa Shields, still undefeated. now, let's just say undisputed heavyweight champion. But given that is the case, yeah, there's still a lot to be desired as far as like Claressa Shields and where she feels that she stands in the sport of boxing. There. First, I wanted to go to Terrell if you're, still here, and then I'm gonna go to the boxing academic.
Yeah, so I was closely listening to you as you just introduced this the fight card in Flint here, right? So going to fight, Chris was what, 15-0, right? 15-0, right?
Yeah.
And her opponent was 5-0, right?
Yep.
So, and once again, I understand you got to fight who's in front of you. I get that, right? And sometimes your era you may be devoid of true competition that give you those uh d- legendary fights that you want in your career that just highlight you and highlight all the points that you want to get and make of yourself as being the greatest of all time. I get that. Uh, but look at this. So once again, Shields 15-0, her opponent's 5-0, right? Look in comparison and to the men's card the previous night. Benavidez 29-0 going into a fight, and Morrell what 11-0, right? And you think of the magnitude of fights that those two guys have had uh in their careers, right? And now, granted, Morrell probably has to have that top level competition, but he himself, his all his fights have shown who he is until he fight Benavidez. So now you flip over to once again Claressa Shields with all her things that she's done in the ring, Olympics, weight classes, titles, unifications. I get that, right? And now you find some girl at heavyweight who's 5-0, doesn't have a name, has some natural size, but that's really about it, right? And that 5-0 is a true 5-0 and definitely speaks to her abilities and experience like that. And Carissa goes in and puts on a good show. Like I said, got a couple knockdowns and got the belt unified, right?
She
But
became undisputed on this fight. She became
I,
undisputed.
okay, yeah, cool. Undisputed at heavyweight. But I get that. But do I want? Honestly, I'm just real. I'm not a hater. My friend always says, "Man, you always hate on Carissa." No, no, I'm just I call it like I see it, right? For a fan and from someone that's more than a fan. I get her. Once again, I get what she's accomplished. But am I truly impressed? Not really. I mean, and I said once again, I understand you got to fight who's in front of you. There's many fighters throughout history where they didn't have those top level opponents to push them like that. You know, it's unfortunate. Uh, but good for her. Good for her. Good for her.
Okay. I will piggyback off of Terrell. And I am in complete agreement with Terrell. So going into the fight, I didn't know a lot about Danielle Perkins. I did do a little history check to see, sort of the accolades, and don't quote me on this, but I saw that in her amateur, she won like a bronze or something in the world championships one year, and then she won a gold in the world championships the next year. And then she became pro in 2020. And from 2020, she had 5 fights since 2020. So that's 5 years, 5 fights, 1 fight a year. And so she's a pro. And then the belt that she ended up getting was a WBC silver belt, so a minor belt
Mm.
as well. Am I wrong in saying that? Is that not a minor belt?
Well, that's a minor belt, but after she won that minor belt, the WBC silver title, like her next fight was not until 2024, right?
Okay.
So that the fight that she had for the silver heavyweight title was on the same card as when Claressa Shields fought Marie DeCare in the super welterweight division back in 2021.
Wow. Okay. All right. I'm going to continue. Thank you for being. Thank you for putting clarity on that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm looking at this from high level. And then, I said, Danielle Perkins, and then I got sort of the AI history version of her.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that she was a former basketball player. So we understand her height. We understand her being 6 foot and in the heavyweight division. And she used to play professional basketball overseas. And the reason why she stopped playing professional basketball, again, this is me looking up what Google said. The reason why she stopped playing professional basketball is because she had a car accident and she got paralyzed. So she was paralyzed for some time. She got her faculties back and she ended up transitioning to boxing. So I'm going into my thoughts on the fight. Claressa Shields is that woman. She is that woman. Full stop. She just won in a undisputed with a couple vacant belts. She won the undisputed with somebody who had a minor belt, and then she wanted the undisputed with her own heavyweight belts as well. So she fought a lady where she only had one, really one title fight. The lady did, and then the rest of the belts are sort of vacant belts in a sense. And if I'm wrong on any of this, please correct me. And then the lady who she fought was paralyzed at some point. Not trying to take anything away from Danielle Perkins, because as someone mentioned earlier, the style, if there is that prototype fighter there, that might be the style that gives Claressa the most trouble. Someone who's tall, who can keep her at range, and who can have the energy to throw punches. Because as a 40-year-old woman, she didn't have the energy to do that. I'm saying all this to say, what Claressa Shields is doing is impressive. But am I impressed, as Terrell said, with everything that I looked up? I can't say that I am. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. No, I'm not impressed. And the reason why I'm not impressed is because this makes me feel almost like the lower weight classes. I know Matt will not agree with me on this, and I don't watch a lot of those fights. But one of the gripes that I have with the smaller guys is that they move up 6 pounds, and in the span of 6 pounds, they win 4 belts. 3, okay, maybe I'm exaggerating. They win 3 belts, and so you get people who are 3-time champions, and they've only moved up 6 pounds. And I get it. As far as the weight composition, those 6 pounds matter. At the same time, it's just a little different when you have somebody, let's say, like doing it at light heavyweight, then going up to cruiserweight, or doing cruiserweight and going up to heavyweight. It just means a little bit more. Or doing it at welterweight and going up to super welterweight and middleweight, it just means a little bit more. Going back to Claressa Shields, the competition is not there. While Danielle Perkins probably could beat a lot of women, it just leaves a sort of it leaves it's not even a bitter taste. It leaves sort of something about the taste ain't right when she gets an undisputed in this way. And she did everything she was supposed to do. She did her thing, but
Right.
the competition is not there.
Now, this was kind of talked about in our last conversation or last debate there with of course, Matt of Brunch Boxing. And one of the things that he brought up with Claressa Shields is that, like, she won titles that were vacant titles, but that is in reference to trying to put a belt on a name, so to speak, right? So I went on the thing with the box rec, and I'm seeing here that she fought in bouts that had vacant titles on the line in, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in any capacity, not like just world titles, but any type of titles in any capacity. That's 8 fights out of the 16 that she's had. So for half of her career, she's fought in bouts that have vacant titles on the line. And for that, I'm like, it kind of goes into what you're saying there about academic, as far as like the lack of competition or the lack of fighters that are there within that particular division. I mean, of course, with the heavyweight division, it's not going to have that many people that many fighters there anyway. There, but I mean, even on BoxRec, it says like they list 17 registered fighters in the heavyweight division there for women's boxing. So, to your point, you say, okay, yes, she has these accolades as far as like being a world champion in these particular divisions, but how is it when you have these wins in divisions that only have like 17 registered fighters, or maybe like in the light heavyweight division, they have 30 registered fighters there in the light heavyweight division. You know what I mean? I could, go down the line. I could see about how many they have in the super middleweight division. They list 38 in the super middleweight division. So that kind of like goes into the discussion of her. Okay, you could probably have her up at the top in reference to women's boxing, but boxing overall, I'm not sure about all that.
One of the reasons why Floyd Mayweather is criticized in terms of his positioning as an all-time great is because not many times will people say unanimously that he fought somebody that could beat him. Maybe earlier you could say that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once he got to that world status, did he fight people that could really beat him? He was, once he got to the twilight of his career, he was always the one who was stated to win. And so they will not put him in the same conversation with a Sugar Ray Robinson or Sugar Ray Leonard or Muhammad Ali, because all these people fought people who was good enough to beat them. And so this is the same gripe that's going always when they try to say, as far as Claressa is concerned, she's okay in terms of decoration, she is decorated. But when you look into the depth of the decorations, you can't really compare it because it's apples and oranges. And it's just, she hadn't fought nobody who really could beat her, who really had an opportunity to beat her, who was favored to beat her. She's always the one who was favored. Is that her fault? No. Is it her fault that she's the best one? No. But yeah.
Okay. I'll put it into this perspective of let's say, well, even with the thing there that you mentioned with Floyd Mayweather, right? Yes, he's been, significantly better than a majority of the opponents that he's faced. But also on top of that, a lot of the fighters that he's faced have been able to become elite in their division or whatever it is. Because, a lot of times it's been brought up that he's, defeated multiple Hall of Famers. Like within the class that he was inducted in, even though it was for 3 years, like they had Miguel Cotto inducted, they had Shane Mosley inducted, they had who was it? Juan Manuel Marquez inducted into that class. You're gonna have Manny Pacquiao inducted in this year's class. Later on down the line, you're gonna have Canelo Alvarez inducted in that class, and he's defeated all of those guys. So you could see that at least with him, he is better than all of those guys that either are or eventually will be in the Hall of Fame. With Claressa Shields, who is going to be the fighters that she's defeated that could eventually say, hey, they have a case to be inducted into the Hall of Fame? We're not sure, and we it's almost like we're not certain here yet, because a lot of times a lot of these fighters don't have the longevity in order to have their or make a case to be under consideration for a Hall of Fame. Maybe there might be one. Maybe it's Franchon Cruz DeZern, but it depends on how long DeZern continues her career. But outside of that, I don't see who Claressa has faced up to this point that could, make a case to be inducted in the Hall of Fame. So that's the thing about it, as far as like, when she kind of like mentions herself in the same as like a Evander Holyfield, a Muhammad Ali, or what, like a Vasyl Lomachenko or something like that. Like, I'm not all too sure how she is like on that same parallel.
And when you say undisputed for men's boxing, one thing that we know is that it is very political. It's just recently where people really got an opportunity to even grasp undisputed.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, it's a lot of people who could have made a claim to it, but they would have never sniffed to them, WBO belt or whatever, right? And so it's I'm happy that she is getting, the accolades, but I just it feels like it's an asterisk on it because it ain't. It's a victory that's won, but like how much she put in every bit of work to earn what she earned, but she ain't go out and spear the damn deer and gut the motherfucker and take the hair off the motherfucker and then cook it. It was prepared already in the frozen oven, and the only thing she did was take the plastic off and put it in the microwave.
Talk your shit, chef. Talk your shit.
No, I'm not talking about shit, and I'm not trying to disrespect her. I'm just simply saying
it's a comparison. It's a comparison. You know what I
it's
mean?
what?
Yeah, it's a comparison, overall comparison. That's how you're putting it. It's like those people that go out there in Alaska, and, on them ships and catching them king crabs and comparing that to somebody just putting it in a in a pot of water and boiling it.
And saying they cooking like it's I'm happy and I'm glad, but it just feels sort of, I don't know the word I'm looking for here.
Less.
And wrong. It feels what?
Less. Feels less.
It feels less when she can become undisputed against Danielle Perkins. And Perkins is a good fighter. I think she could beat, but she's an older woman. And then you throw in some vacant belts, and then she get the accolades. Like, where's the real adversity? Where's the real? I'm not saying she need to be laid out on her back by somebody for us to believe that she is whatever. She would be more respected, in my opinion, if she didn't just get all the accolades and she won and did everything she was supposed to do, because as many accolades as she's getting, it's coming so easy. And again, it ain't her fault that it's coming easy, but it's coming so, maybe easy is not the word. I'm gonna formulate my thoughts on what I'm really trying to say. But the fact it's so saturated, it's getting so saturated.
Yeah, get it. And this kind of go well. I got to bring up Brother Ray Davis in the chat. Like said, says salute by source says, though Claressa has the accolades, does she get credit for being great if her resume is weak? I know it's not her fault. I mean, you got that's a good question there, and we had these comparisons too, but I've also said that it's almost like comparing Class 6A football in Florida to Class A, single A football in Florida, because the competition is completely different. I mean, and anybody that's watch high school football at any capacity in any state, then you know about the classes that they have in football. They have it in basketball as well. They have it in baseball. They're in high school sports. I mean, I can't necessarily have it to professional baseball and say single A in order in comparison to the major leagues. So I just say class 6A in high school football to class A in high school football, because the amount of competition and the intensity in the competition in those different classes on two different planets. So if you're having somebody that plays at a 6A level, but is going up against people that are at a single A level, then yeah, they're going to basically beat all of them. You see what I mean?
And they will get criticized because of that. And they will always feel like, so I sort of feel for Claressa, because on one end, I understand where she's coming from, where she says people don't give her a just due. We know that she's great, but when you fighting people that you're head over heels better than, what you expect us to do other than criticize that you ain't fought nobody who really had a chance to beat you? Andre Ward is a good example. Now, maybe not Andre Ward, but I don't know. I just wish there was more competition so we wouldn't have to criticize her.
Right. And it's one thing that is hurting her in a sense, because my thing is that when we talk about boxing overall in general, and we look at fights, and if a fight is a big fight in any stretch, right? That means that it's two fighters that are at a high level or have a following big enough to where, hey, we know that if these two fighters are going to be matched up against each other, then yeah, we're going to have a big fight on our hands, because we know about the history of those two fighters, and we know about how much how much of a following that they have. Here in this particular instance, it's who in women's boxing around those weight classes has that type of following to where if you have those two fighters be in the ring, then yeah, it's going to generate a big buzz or a big fight. What do we have here for two fights? One in Madison Square Garden and one at AT&T Stadium. You had Katie Taylor, you had Amanda Serrano, and they were able to have all of that interest in both of those fights. Why? Because both of them, to a certain extent, had the popularity to where they said, hey, if we have this fight here in Madison Square Garden, you're going to have the support there for Katie Taylor. You're going to have the support there for Amanda Serrano. And ended up being a sellout there at Madison Square Garden. And then the rematch there at AT&T Stadium to be, as a co-feature or whatever it is, or Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, got the attention that it did. And then with the way that the fight turned out, it got even a lot more attention. So that's the thing. Who is out there for Claressa Shields where they say, if these two fought, yeah, it's going to be a fight. Maybe, just maybe, it may have to be outside of the boxing world, or a fighter that's outside of boxing for, the most part, has had a few fights in boxing, but is known as an MMA fighter, and that's Chris Cyborg. Maybe that's the one that kind of says, hey, okay, oh yeah, we need to see this fight, but that remains to be seen. Now, shout out to Juice here. He says, salute the boxing source in chat. Says Claressa Shields deserves credit for separating herself from all competition and hypothetical matchups. Layla Ali, I guess. It's not her fault if fans only know a few female boxers. Well,
I agree with him. I agree. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, but my thing is, okay, whose fault is it then? Because I think here's another one, and I'm gonna look into this too. Right, a number of fighters in women's boxing, for the most part, are not from the U.S. And those that are, once again, for the most part, are pretty much from around the same class that Claressa Shields was in, whether it's 2012 or 2016. They're around that same class. Shadasia Green, Franchon Cruz, Tika Hemingway, who else? Raquel Miller. You know, even with Danielle Perkins fought Shadasia Green in the amateurs. So a number of these fighters that are around that same weight class that are from the US or probably was part of the Olympic team or around for Olympic trials, like that's pretty much like all we have. At least here from the US, but everybody else is, from outside of the US, basically. So that's something there where that kind of like goes into I would say the detriment there for Claressa Shields is that there's not enough American fighters around the weight classes that she's been in. A majority of them are going to be in the lower weight classes, welterweight on down. Anything over that, yeah, good luck on that. Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
agree. I agree with him in that she does deserve credit for separating herself from all the competition.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna say hypothetical matchups. I don't agree with that. It's not her fault. Fans only know a few female boxers. It ain't her fault that fans only know a few female boxers. At the same time, what I do know, when I see the product in the ring, I see the difference in skill level shown. I see the plateau that a certain fighter will ever reach, just based on how they and part of it is her outclassing them and doing all this and doing all of that. But Danielle Perkins can beat probably a number of people, but she okay, but she ain't. Is she world class? I don't know. Because I'm one of the fighters who don't know all the names in the heavyweight women's division. But yeah, I'll let somebody else say something.
All right, so we talk about this thing here with the lack of depth in these weight classes, right? And Juice had just mentioned there in reference to Danielle Perkins advocating for having a heavyweight division, back in 2021. As we mentioned there with that pay-per-view that was March of that year, where Perkins won a heavyweight belt there, I guess, in reference to that. But with Perkins, like she had been, floating, up and down from heavyweight to light heavyweight. And in light heavyweight, I had mentioned there that there was about 30 fighters listed on BoxRec to be registered as pro fighter in the light heavyweight division. And one of those fighters that is in the top 5 is Emma Sue Greentree from Australia. And her record is 1-0. Yet she's listed, rated in the top 5 in the light heavyweight division according to BoxRec. So I mean that shows you, one, the lack of depth and to a certain extent the lack of competition there, when it comes to those higher divisions there. So I mean, we'll probably, get into more into this discussion here. I guess, later on in the week. I'll have to see if we continue it here on the midweek report because, listen, I still want to have another guest on to follow up with this, but weren't necessarily able to get them on here at this particular time, right? Yeah, that was a fail trying to get that guy on. So we're just gonna move on from that. So
damn, don't duck me, son. Don't duck me, son.
Don't duck me, son. All right.
I was gonna tell you to say it because I can't say it like you can, but yeah.
And shout out Keith Thurman there. He back in the ring. He's coming back. He's coming back in March, man. He's coming back. All right. So with that being said, that is our great discussion here for this particular episode of the Boxing Source podcast. Big thanks for our panelists here, the Boxing Academic and the Chef Terrell here for being on this podcast, and also a big thanks for Coach Bob Santos to be on here with us to talk about the fights that happened at T-Mobile Arena on Saturday night. Once again, I'll work on getting this on for audio form to be available on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and whatever podcast app is out there that people listen to. And we'll see if we can resume this boxing discussion on Wednesday with the midweek report. Hey, that weekend, last weekend, pretty much starts a very busy scheduling in the sport of boxing here over the next 6 weeks or so. So we'll try to catch up with as much as we can, and with the news and everything like that. So we'll have, I guess we'll have more on that thing there with the Pro Box card, especially with that recent news about Lester Martinez being scratched from the bout that he's supposed to have with Joshon James. Yeah, it's crazy there, but yeah, like I said, thanks for everyone for being part of this particular episode of the Boxing Source podcast. And I will check y'all out later. Peace out.